Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of the Leaders in Supply Chain and Logistics podcast. The season 1 finale is here, running through the highlights of the episodes from the past year. Special discussion with surprise hosts brought to you by the team behind the scenes. Enjoy!
All right, so you want to make it big in supply chain, huh? Maybe even snag a board seat someday.
Well, that's the dream for a lot of folks.
Yeah, so we've got this report, Career Advice for Supply Chain Executives 2024, and some snippets from the Leaders in Supply Chain and Logistics podcast.
Some real gems in those.
Definitely. Let's dive in and see what we can learn from these supply chain rock stars.
Yeah. It's really fascinating to see how much the supply chain executive role is changing. I mean, even in just the past few years.
Right. What's the biggest thing that jumps out at you?
I'd have to say digital transformation. It's not just a buzzword anymore. It's like the key dividing line between companies that are thriving and,
The ones that are getting left behind?
Exactly. This report makes it crystal clear that companies that are embracing things like AI and intelligent automation are the ones that are really pulling ahead.
Okay, so you said intelligent automation. I'm picturing like a warehouse full of robots.
You're not wrong. I mean, think about it. Robots that aren't just moving boxes around, but that are actually using AI to do things like predict demand, optimize routes, even manage inventory.
Wow, so the robots are calling the shots now.
In a way, yeah. But that's actually a good thing. It frees up the humans to focus on higher level tasks, like building relationships, problem solving, the stuff that AI can't do.
Makes sense. So what does all this mean for someone who wants to be a supply chain leader? Do they need to go back to school for robotics?
Well, a little coding knowledge never hurts. But honestly, the most important skill, according to Mary Stevens, the COO of Kenvue, is your ability to learn.
Okay, interesting.
Think about it. In a field that's changing as quickly as supply chain, you can't just rely on what you learned 5 or 10 years ago.
You've got to be constantly learning.
Exactly. You need to have that insatiable curiosity, that drive to understand new technologies and how they're going to impact the supply chain.
So it's less about having all the answers right now and more about being open to learning new things all the time.
100%. And then there's digital fluency. I mean, it's one thing to understand AI in theory. It's another thing to actually be able to use it to make decisions and solve problems.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's the kind of expertise that companies are going to be looking for.
Okay, so we've got this picture of the future supply chain leader. They're super adaptable, they're tech savvy, but then there's all this talk in the report about collaboration and agility, which seem kind of like soft skills.
They may be soft skills, but they're absolutely essential in today's world.
How so?
Well, think about it. The old siloed approach just doesn't cut it anymore. You need leaders who can work across teams, across departments, even across entire industries.
Okay, I see what you mean.
I mean, Angela Crecho, CEO of Avon, she described her team as an enabling team. I love that phrase.
That's a good one.
Because it really captures that focus on seeing the big picture and working together to make things happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've got this image of the future supply chain leader. They're tech savvy, they're agile, they're a team player, they're a lifelong learner. What else jumped out at you from what these leaders had to say?
Amidst all this talk about data and technology, I was really struck by how much emphasis they put on storytelling.
Storytelling, I mean, I get it, it's important, but isn't supply chain all about data?
It is. But even in a data-driven world, humans connect through stories. Thomas Erickson, the author of Surrounded by Idiots, he talked about tailoring your stories to different audiences. Like when you're pitching to the C-suite, he said, start with the punchline. They don't have time for all the details.
Makes sense.
And then you've got Kjell Nordstrom, who wrote Momentum. He believes that words and images are incredibly powerful tools for leadership. He even went so far as to say the pen is mightier than the sword when it comes to leadership.
Okay, so it's about finding ways to take all that data and those insights and weaving them into a narrative that people can connect with.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to persuade people to get them on board with your vision.
It's not just about the numbers, it's about the story behind the numbers.
Right. And speaking of stories, this report talks about the supply chain executive becoming more of a strategic business leader, not just focused on operations. What do you think about that?
It's interesting, right? Traditionally, supply chain has been seen as this cost center focused on efficiency and logistics.
Right. Keep costs down, keep things moving.
But now, it's like supply chain is moving to the forefront, becoming a key driver of business strategy.
Vikram Agarwal, the COO of Danone, He talked about focusing on business value, not just supply chain value. So collaborating with departments like marketing and sales to develop innovative products, using the supply chain as a source of competitive advantage.
Yeah, I can see that. So you're not just managing logistics, you're a core part of the company's overall strategy. That's got to be a lot of pressure.
No doubt. Speaking of pressure, the report and these podcast episodes really hammer home the importance of resilience in this crazy world we live in.
Absolutely. David Boulanger from Arla Foods, he said, I really believe that behind each crisis, there is a big opportunity.
I love that.
Me too. And he talked about how vital it is to have a strong team around you to help you navigate those tough times, turning challenges into opportunities for growth and innovation.
That makes a lot of sense, especially now with all the disruptions we've seen lately with the explosion of e-commerce.
You're right. E-commerce has put so much pressure on supply chains, demanding more speed, more flexibility, and more resilience than ever before.
So it's not just about bouncing back from setbacks. It's about thriving in a world that's constantly changing.
It sounds like you need to build up your resilience muscle.
Exactly. And to do that, it takes more than just systems and processes. It takes personal resilience, too.
Right. So how do you build that muscle both individually and as a team?
Lubada Kolk, the CEO of Ahold Delhaize Europe and Indonesia, he talked about how important physical and mental health are for leaders, especially in times of uncertainty. You need to be able to handle the pressure, make sound decisions, even when things are going crazy.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that ties into the need for diverse perspectives and different approaches to problem solving.
Absolutely. Diversity isn't just some trendy buzzword. It's about bringing in a wide range of experiences and perspectives to help your team navigate complex challenges.
More brains were better than one.
Exactly. And it's not enough to just attract diverse talent. You have to foster a culture of inclusion. That's where the magic happens.
I love that quote from Maria Pia de Caro, the EVP at Pernod Ricard. She said, diversity is about being invited to the party. Inclusion is about being invited to dance.
That's perfect. It really captures the essence of creating a workplace where everyone feels valued and empowered.
And it's not just the right thing to do. It's good business guy, Kawasaki, that author and investor. He said it best. There are probably not too many examples of companies who died because they were too diverse.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
Definitely. I think this is a good place to take a breather. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still so much more to unpack.
Agreed. We've talked about the big picture skills, mindset shifts. But next time we'll get into the practical stuff, the actionable tips and strategies for reaching the top of your game in supply chain.
Sounds good.
All right, so we've talked about the big picture, the skills, the mindset, but now let's get down to brass tacks. How do you actually move up in the supply chain world? How do you get a promotion?
That's what everyone wants to know, right? The report and these podcast guests, they gave so much great advice. Where do we even start?
Well, it all comes back to relationships. I mean, building a strong network, it's not just about collecting business cards at some conference.
Right. It's about making genuine connections.
Exactly. It's about building relationships that last. Tarek Mein, the CSKO of Beckel, he said something that really stuck with me. He said, build relationships and networks. If you take care of today, continue learning and building your network, you'll be very successful.
That makes sense. So how do you actually do that? How do you build those relationships beyond just, going to networking events?
Well, one way is to collaborate on cross-functional projects. I mean, that's a fantastic way to learn from people in different departments and gives you a chance to show off your skills.
All right, get your name out there.
And then there's mentorship. Don't underestimate the power of having someone who can guide you and open doors for you.
Yeah.
Cheryl Capps, a board member at Integer Holdings, she talked about how she strategically sought out mentors early in her career.
And look where she is now.
Exactly. She said having those mentors was a huge part of her success.
So we've got networking, we've got mentorship. What else can someone do to really stand out?
Take initiative. Don't wait for someone to tell you what to do. Volunteer for challenging assignments. Be proactive. Take ownership of your work. And don't be afraid to speak up and share your ideas.
So basically be a go-getter.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But there's a fine line, right? You don't want to overstep boundaries or step on anyone's toes.
You got to read the room.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where you're showing that you're eager to contribute, but you're also respecting the established hierarchy and processes.
So be a problem solver, not a problem creator.
Nailed it. And remember what Vikram Agarwal from Danone said, your ability as a supply chain professional to deploy that leadership brilliance deep down in the organization is ultimately what creates success.
It's like leadership isn't just a title, it's a way of being.
And speaking of ways of being, both the report and the podcast guests really emphasize the importance of continuous learning.
It's a theme that keeps coming up.
For good reason.
Oh.
And the supply chain world is constantly changing. You got to keep up.
So what does that look like in practice? How do you stay ahead of the curve?
Hanno Brumer from Covestro talked about how important it is to develop both hard skills and soft skills. Don't underestimate things like communication, collaboration, problem solving.
Right, those are essential.
Absolutely.
Right.
I love what Tarek Amin said. He said, continue to be curious and learn about every aspect of the job or the industry you choose to be part of.
So be a lifelong learner.
Exactly. And don't limit yourself to just the technical aspects of supply chain. Branch out. Learn about finance. Learn about marketing. Learn about leadership. The more well-rounded you are, the better equipped you'll be to lead.
And along with all that learning, you need to be able to communicate your ideas effectively, right? You need to be able to influence people.
Oh, absolutely. You can have the greatest ideas in the world, but if you can't articulate them and get people on board, they're not going to go anywhere.
So how do you do that? How do you become a more persuasive communicator?
Well, storytelling is a big part of it. Remember what Jackie Starm from Intel said? The reality is that at the end of the day, we all work for finance, meaning you need to be able to speak the language of business. You need to be able to connect your ideas to the bottom line. Tell a compelling story that resonates with the people who hold the purse strings.
Right. So it's not just about the data, it's about the narrative.
And sometimes you need to be more direct. Jackie also talked about how she's learned the value of honesty and transparency over the years.
So being straight up is important too.
It is. Sometimes you just got to say what needs to be said,
Yeah.
even if it's not the easiest thing to do.
So be authentic, be honest. It all comes back to integrity, right?
Exactly. And that leads to something else that really resonated with me. This idea of finding purpose and passion in your work.
That's huge. Because if you're not passionate about what you're doing, what's the point?
Julie Smith, the founder of Talent Sprout Limited, she talked about the importance of aligning your values with the company you work for.
If your values don't align, it's going to be a tough road.
It is. It's so much easier to be motivated and committed when you believe in what you're doing and the people you're doing it with.
So it's not just about climbing the ladder. It's about finding a path that feels meaningful.
And that's where mentorship can be so valuable, right? Having someone who can help you figure out what you're passionate about and how to make it happen.
It's like having a guide on your journey, someone who's been there before.
And remember what Mary Stevens said. It doesn't matter how old you are or where you are in your career. If you embrace the philosophy that you always need to be better through learning, you're always going to be an invaluable asset to any company.
Lifelong learning is key.
It is. So find what you love, keep learning, and the sky's the limit. And don't be afraid to dream big. I love what David Belanger said. He said, believe in your dream, you can make it come true.
It sounds cheesy, but it's true. If you don't believe in yourself, no one else will.
He also said, when you do the right thing with the right people and engage those around your dream, nothing is impossible. You can achieve everything.
It's about finding your tribe and working together to make those dreams a reality. So we've talked about networking, mentorship, taking initiative, continuous learning, communication, finding your purpose. Anything else we should add to our listeners' toolbox? So we've covered a lot of ground, but we can't wrap up this deep dive without talking about the one thing that's probably top of mind for anyone who's ambitious.
Getting that promotion.
Yeah, exactly. What's the secret sauce? What are some strategies that actually work?
Well, first and foremost, you got to go above and beyond. Remember what Angela Cretu said. She was always raising her hand for new projects, always embracing challenges.
Be the person who's always willing to step up.
Right. And it's not just about working hard, it's about working smart. You got to be able to demonstrate the value you're bringing to the table.
Prove your worth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Use data, use storytelling, whatever it takes to showcase your impact and connect it back to the company's goals. Mary Stevens was really big on that.
Makes sense. So work hard, work smart, but also...
Don't forget about teamwork.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're not in this alone. Guy Kawasaki said it best. Your job is to make your boss look good. And when your boss looks good, you look good. And when your boss progresses, you progress.
It's all connected.
It is. It's not about stepping on others to get ahead. It's about working together to achieve collective success.
So teamwork makes the dream work.
And that brings us back to that idea of collaboration and breaking down silos. When everyone is working together towards a common goal, everyone wins.
So what are some key takeaways our listeners should really take to heart?
Well, the biggest one is that the role of the supply chain executive is changing faster than ever. You got to be adaptable. You got to be tech savvy. You got to be collaborative. And you got to be resilient.
No pressure.
But don't forget the human element. Building relationships, Nurturing talent, finding your purpose, those things are just as important as the technical skills.
It's about finding that balance, the hard skills and the soft skills.
And never stop learning. Find mentors, build your network, and be proactive. You're in control of your own destiny.
It's been awesome exploring all these insights with you. I feel like I've learned a ton.
Me too. And to our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you the tools and the inspiration you need to take your supply chain career to the next level.
The future is yours to create. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep pushing the boundaries.
That's what it's all about.
And with this, Season 1 of the Leaders in Supply Chain and Logistics podcast is now wrapped up. We hope you enjoyed listening to the highlights of the 28 interviews from 2024. The voice you're hearing now belongs to Christina Tsetko, and our mysterious co-hosts are Elaine and Tim, our AI friends, lending a helping hand in this special episode brought to you by the Alcott Global team. We are already excited for 2025, and we invite you to tune in for Season 2 of the Leaders in Supply Chain and Logistics podcast with our usual hosts, Radu, Faye, and Stephanie, and their guests. Until then, happy end of the year celebrations to you, our listeners from around the world. To catch all our episodes, visit www.alcottglobal.com and click the podcast button. You can also find us on your favorite streaming platforms like iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music. If you enjoy the show, we'd greatly appreciate your support with a kind review. 5 stars really help us keep the momentum and make our production team smile. Don't forget to share the podcast with your friends. Thank you for listening.